Hey yo guys, welcome back to yet another video with me, HNS, your econs buddy. Okay, this video is mainly targeted towards JC1 students and it's about transiting into microeconomics and microeconomics. Yeah, I'm not saying JC2 students should not watch this video. Yes, please go ahead and watch this video as this will give you the basic understanding of the fundamentals of macroeconomics. In specific today, we are gonna delve into aggregate demand in the aggregate demand curve. So yeah, I'll take a very simple approach and make it very simplistic so that the JC students, especially the JC1 students, could understand and transit into from microecons into macroecons with ease. Yeah. So without further ado, let's proceed. Okay, so the fundamental of macroeconomics revolve around these two terms. I'm pretty sure you should have heard your seniors or your alumni or your friends or your peers who are older than you speak of these two terms, which is aggregate demand and aggregate supply. In JC1, all you have learned is demand and supply in price mechanism. And you guys would have been wondering what aggregate demand and what's aggregate supply. Yeah, so we are going to go through what that means. Yeah, and specifically in this video, I will be concentrating on aggregate demand. In the part 2 of and part 3 of this video, I'll move on to aggregate supply, general price level, and real national income. So all those stuff you should not need to worry about for now. For this video, just try to understand what's aggregate demand and make sense of it. So if I just introduce a very new term and a strange term, you guys would feel that this very alien and you guys might have trouble and difficulties understanding. So I'm gonna illustrate this to you guys with correlating price mechanism and macroeconomics. More often than not, price mechanism is the first chapter, okay, maybe central economic problem, but other than that, my price mechanism is the first chapter, the first topic that every JC students learn in their economic syllabus. So you guys should have been very familiar and should be very familiar with price mechanism. So I'm going to draw some similarities and differences between macroeconomics and price mechanism so that you guys could easily understand what macroeconomics is, and in particular you guys would really understand the concept of aggregate demand and how aggregate demand works. So without further ado, let's move on. So, what are the elements of price mechanism? Price mechanism simply has these three terms in it. I mean, these are the three terms that you always see in every diagram, every question, and yeah, more often than not, 90 to 95% of the economic syllabus in price mechanism revolves around these three terms, which are demand, supply, price, and quantity. Price and quantity are the x and y axis of any diagrams, and it always has a demand curve and a supply curve, right? You guys should have been very familiar with these. So, yeah. In particular, since we are going to talk about aggregate demand, I would like to introduce to you guys how demand from price mechanism is similar to aggregate demand in macroeconomics. So, although these two terms might not really have any correlation or any form of relationship in the real world, I felt that okay, if I introduce demand to you guys and introduce aggregate demand via the concept of demand in price mechanism, you guys would understand easier on okay how aggregate demand works in real life and how aggregate demand works in this syllabus. So yeah, so demand in price mechanism. Who are the stakeholders involved in the demand in price mechanism? The demand curve, the DD curve, you know, the downward sloping DD curve. Why is it downward sloping? Because of diminishing marginal returns, all those stuff, you know, all these stuff, right? Who are the stakeholders involved in the demand curve? Organically, the stakeholder involved in the demand curve is consumers. Yes, more often than not, consumers are the only people who are affected by the demand curve. And what are the factors that affect the consumers in which in turn affects the demand curve? The factors are Egypt. Yeah, I'm not talking about the country Egypt. I'm talking about the acronym for the factors affecting demand, which are expectations of future prices, government policies, income, price of competitors, and distant preferences. Yet again, this should not be alien to you guys, because in year one, J1, you guys should have been very familiar with all these terms, because you have been revising this on and on and on for very long. So yeah, these shouldn't be alien to you guys. So let's see how demand works in a market, in a free market. Let's use the example of water. So let's say this brand of water, which is Dasani or Dasani, however you like to pronounce it. So how does the factor affect the impact on consumers and in turn affects the demand curve in price mechanism? So the factors are EGYPT, right? So firstly, expectations of expensive future prices. Oh, water is gonna be very expensive in future, so I'm gonna buy water now, so the demand for water increases currently. Okay, government policies to subsidize water. Okay, initially it was $1 per pack bottle of Dasani water. Now the government subsidized this firm, so and like the bottle of water is now around 50 cents or something. So the demand would be higher because the cost is lower because of government subsidies and policies. And the third one, which is income, the income level rises. That means your affordability to increase water charges, water bills, and increase the expenditure on buying cartons of water. Initially, you could have bought one carton of Dasani water per month. Now you're buying like two cartons, three cartons of water. So because of the increase in income, yeah. And thirdly, and fourthly, population growth. The more the population growth, that means there will be demand for more water. So that means more people would demand to buy Dasani water. So the demand curve increases. Lastly, the taste and preferences. Oh, last time I like to buy sweet drinks. I like to drink Coca-Cola. Like to drink Sprite, 7 Up, Pepsi, whatnot. But now I'm more diet conscious. I am more health conscious. So I'm gonna drink water from now, so the demand for Dasani water increases. So uh, this is how the DD curves shift from, as the diagram shows, D1, sorry, how the DD curve shifts from D to D1 because of all these factors. Yeah, you guys following me so far? This should be quite familiar with you guys have, as you guys are doing this for the past 1 year. So next one, you guys will be wondering, hey, I know this already lah, why you going through this with me? So let me draw the similarity now. Okay, yeah, how is this similar or different to aggregate demand? Okay, initially, earlier I mentioned that stakeholders involved in demand curve is just the consumer, right? Just the consumer are involved in the DD curve, so only the consumers are being affected by it, right? However, in macroeconomics, in specific aggregate demand, these are the four stakeholders who are involved and who are affected by the aggregate demand, and who can control and who control and become the factors which affect the aggregate demand. They are consumers like you and I, government, investors, people who want to invest in the country. They could be foreign investors, FDI and all those stuff. Yeah, they could be foreign investors. They could be local investors. Lastly, foreign market. People who are buying your exports, and people who you are buying from. Like let's say for Singapore, you are exporting technological products like Razer phones and all those stuff to other countries, and Singapore imports battery from China, stuffed toy from China, all this stuff. So yeah, the foreign market also plays a crucial role in aggregate demand. So okay, we know all this, right? But how do we measure aggregate demand? What is there a formula for aggregate demand? How do you measure this thing called aggregate demand? Yep. So moving on, this is the formula for aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is measured by the four stakeholders, which are consumers, investors, government, and the foreign market. The consumers who consume, okay, so consumption is one part of aggregate demand. Investors invest, so investment becomes the other component of aggregate demand. Government spend on the country, government spend on upgrading the nation, so government expenditure becomes another part of aggregate demand. And last but not the least, exports revenue minus the import expenditure. Okay, what's export revenue? Just now I said that Singapore export Razer phones to China or other parts of the world, right? So export revenue is the money earned from exporting the Razer phones from Singapore to other countries. And what's import expense? Import expenditure is what you pay to other countries to buy their products. For example, Singapore pays China money to buy their batteries, or Singapore pays China to to buy their toys, to buy their plastic items, or to buy their Tupperware, all those stuff. So Singapore pays money to China to buy their products. So those are the import expenditure. So you need to minus revenue minus the expenditure. So revenue minus expenditure gives you X minus M. So X minus M means export revenue minus import expenditure. So this gives you the net export value. So yeah, so in economics, right, we use the term X for exports revenue and we use the term M for import expenditure. So as you can see from the formula, these four stakeholders are the component of the formula for aggregate demand. Consumers, investors, government, and the foreign market. These four stakeholders in turn become the component of aggregate demand. So initially we used the analogy of Dasani water, right? So okay, the demand curve and the price mechanism is only concentrated and focused on one product only, which is Dasani water. The DD curve only affects the market of Dasani water, right? Well, that's not the case for the aggregate demand curve. The AD curve is more than just concerned with Dasani water. It's concerned about water in general. It's about the entire market, its entire economy. It's not just focused on one sector of the economy. It's about the entire economy. So, well, DD curve is micro. It's really micro, and it only considers the Dasani water. And think of it as AD curve, the aggregate demand curve, is macro, and it considers the entire ocean. Yeah, it's as wide as the ocean. So think of it as micro versus macro. So demand curve in price mechanism is micro, while aggregate demand curve in macroeconomics is macro, as the name suggests. So let's use this example of water to see how the changes in factors affect the aggregate demand curve. Okay, so let's say for firstly for consumption. So consumers spend more on income on water bills. So okay, there's a typo here. It's more of income. So consumers spend more of their income on water bills. That means their consumption increases. And investors invest on water pipe projects in Singapore. So let's say they are gonna build more pipes. Foreign investors come into Singapore, build more pipes, build more water networks, water connections. So the investment increases in Singapore, and spends more money on water transportation sectors. Like for example, okay, they buy in more tanker lorries or tankers to transport water from this place to that place. That means the government is spending more money, so the government expenditure increases. So yeah, that's the G factor of aggregate demand. And for the foreign market, let's say countries demand more new water from Singapore. You know, Singapore is already famous for new water, which people used to call toilet water, right? Now all the countries are demanding more of the new water, so the demand for new water increases. That means Singapore exports more new water, so the export revenue rises. And lastly, Singapore demands lesser water from Malaysia. Singapore has its own desalination plant and it has its own new water. So they demand lesser from Malaysia. So the import from Malaysia reduces. The demand for import from Malaysia reduces, causing the import expenditure from Malaysia to decrease. So from the first point, the C increases. The second point, the I point, which is investments, the I increases. The third point, which is government expenditure, G point, the G increases. And foreign countries demand more new water, causing export revenue to increase, whereas Singapore demand lesser from other countries, like for example Malaysia. So the import expenditure decreases, which is the M. So X increase, M decrease, causing X minus M to increase. So C increases, I increases, G increases, and X minus M increases, causing aggregate demand to increase as a whole. So you get what I'm trying to say? Initially, the market of water was just considered in Dasani water and, for example, pure water, Oceania water, all these different products, specific products. But when it comes to macroeconomics, it's about the entire economy. It's about consumer spending on all type of water. It's about investors building huge water networks. It's about government building large scale water pipes. It's about, yeah, you see, you get what I mean? It's a macro scale. There are more than just one stakeholders involved. So yeah, this is the difference and similarity between demand curve in price mechanism and aggregate demand curve in macroeconomics. So I told you how this C increase, I increase, G increase, and X minus M increase causes aggregate demand to increase, right? So diagrammatically, this is how the AD increases from aggregate demand to aggregate demand 1, as shown in the diagram below. All you need to know is AD increase from AD to AD1. And the part about AS and price level, I'll be teaching you guys and going through with you guys in the subsequent videos. For now, you guys just have to understand how aggregate demand works and what are the components of aggregate demand. And I hope you guys understand it quite well. So before I sign out, I would like to make a shout out and make an announcement that I will be conducting private tuition in affordable rates, and I will be making more crash course videos and more live crash course lessons. So if you're interested to join me, and if you're interested to join the online crash course, or if you want to consult me online, if you want to have a private tuition online or in person, you guys could text me and on Telegram, and I will let you guys know the updates. Yeah. So I hope to hear from you guys. And if you guys want the second part and third part of this video, or if you guys found this beneficial, do let me know in the comment section, and do text me on Telegram. Yep. So that's it for today. See you guys, and yeah, see you guys in the part 2 of this video series of aggregate supply. Yeah, yeah. So see you. Bye bye.